The Morning After by 8-Bit. Read to you by Cosmo. I am an intelligent mayor. Oh dear, that may have come across slightly arrogant. By no means am I attempting to, well, the way Final would say is big myself up, but I'm not sure that is quite the way to put it. Perhaps I said it too bluntly. I'll start over. My father always taught me that a lesson learned the hard way will always stay with you forever. This is the belief he holds to heart, and that I, in return, learn to take to heart. And for the most part, I do. If I make a mistake that has consequences of sufficient severity, the chances of me repeating said mistakes are almost nil. Over time, my life experience, both good and bad, have blended together and shaped me into the mayor I am today. And from those consequences, I would say I have attained a fair amount of wisdom. There, that may be much better way of saying it. Now, this may be concerned and considered unusual way to introduce oneself, but I'm sure you'll understand it in a moment. As I explain, my life experience have led me to a decent amount of wisdom as I've grown into the mayor I am. So, how is it that I can be so astronomically moronic whenever alcohol is involved? I suppose this could be considered a moment common issue issues among many ponies at night. The glossy vendor of fun side of getting drunk obscures our common sense, which, to be fair, is terribly which isn't terribly common anymore, and builds us to the inevitable outcome that awaits us all the following morning. I, of course, refer to hangovers, but to be fair, I suppose we get too caught up in the moment to care about the future, what the future holds. One of the benefits of being fairly young that I'll say crep crep de creme before I drink, and final comes along and says, "Ah, I can barely bring myself to say it, YOLO." To be frank, they mean the exact same thing, but after hearing a pouting young mayor saying it as they take selfies whilst pulling those ridiculous duck faces, I think I'm justified in referring the more cultured equivalent. Maybe that's my upbringing. I get some odd looks from time to time, but then again, a Trojan accent isn't very common in Ponyville. It makes people amazed when they find out me and Vinyl are dating. Am I rambling? I do that sometimes. I suppose you're here to hear something a bit more interesting than my opinions on the youth of today. Firstly, yes, me and Vinyl are dating. The same Vinyl who regularly DJs at Club Zero in Ponyville. The same Vinyl Scratch who has several of all of the almost best-selling dubstep records, and also the very same final who was arrested 3 years ago who for aggravated assault on that DJ. I always forget his name. Neon something or other. He provoked her, and the charges were dropped soon after. Yes, that's her, and she's dating me. Who has an who has an honors degree in musical theater, classical, of course, from West Manhattan University, and is the first chair cellist for the Royal Canterlot Symphony Orchestra. Now you would not be the first pony to think it if you said that we appeared to be a mismatched pair. And in this case, opposites attract. Who would be very appropriate expression. Secondly, I will say that the night leading up to this particular series of events is one big blur to me. The last thing I recall is sitting at a bar, marveling at how much I enjoyed the taste of scotch. Beyond that, I have no recollection of anything up to the point where I begin this story, which is my awakening the following morning. If I think back to high school, I can recall my classical civilization studies, where we read about a fellow named Hephrodicus, who wrote a fascinating reading account of 300 soldiers facing off against an army of hundreds of thousands. Specifically, a passage regarding that the earth beneath them trembled as sheer massive hooves walked towards them. That was my first thought as I woke up this morning, as I felt every single one of those hundreds of thousands of ponies that made up the invading Peruvian army were all walking through my head simultaneously. That was my first conscious thought, as I was all, as well as my scratchy throat that felt like the Saddle Arabian desert, dry but also tainted with the consistent aftertaste of bile. Oh, wonderful. Then I suddenly became aware of another sensation, a blissful warmth, through making no effort to make its presence stronger than the more painful sensations dancing around my head. It was most definitely there, and I opened my blurry eyes, blinking a few times to adjust to the light shining through the gaps in the curtains to a very surprising sight. It's important, you know, that while Vinyl is a very caring mirror friend, she isn't hugely affectionate. I mean, we do cuddle up on the sofa and in bed, but I'm always the one cuddling up to her. She prefers to wear the trousers, as my friend Lyra would say. She'll always wrap a comforting cuff around me, but that's the extent of it. So I was very surprised to find myself laid on the sofa, resting my head on Vinyl's chest, while having both her hooves wrapped around me like an oversized stuffed toy. What's more astonishing is the look on her face. She's asleep, but she's wearing a small, contented smile. Normally, I wake up to find that she's rolled over in the night and dragged half the duffet across with her. A quick glance down to my lower half reveals that she brought the duffet downstairs with her, choosing to snuggle up on the sofa with me when there's a perfectly large double bed upstairs. She's more than aware of that. She takes up most of it normally. Then I noticed something peculiarly unusual. Sat on the coffee table is my photo album, the old brown leather one with the pink stitching. A book I have in my possession almost my whole life. 2 decades of history of my life, folded up within the furnished pages. Vinyl must have brought it down at some point in the night to look through while I was sleeping. Now I was getting very confused, so I lifted my head up higher to get a better look to see if my eyes were playing tricks with me. Big mistake. A wave of pain surged through my head, and before I could stop myself, a low moan escaped my lips. My throat burned with the expiration, and Vinyl's eyes shot straight open. It is immediately clear that she had known now here never has much to drink last night, As me, she doesn't like to admit this, but I seem to hold my dream better than she does. Even so, here I was feeling the absolute depth, and she just smiles at me without a care in the world. "Morning, beautiful," she said with a mixture of cheer and affection that seems so out of character for her. "Rough night?" "You're more than welcome to speculate," I said as clearly as possible, but it barely came out louder than a rasp. She simply chuckled, kissed me on my forehead, and eased herself from underneath me. After a quick stretch, she trotted off towards the kitchen, humming happily to herself, and leaving me totally bewildered. Final's morning routine has never been any more graceful than me shaking her awake and normally receiving some groans and the odd moment of flirtatious in return before she finally tears herself away from the bed. And that's that's after a sober night too. I slowly hold myself up into I slowly pull myself up into a sitting position. Then the thin stripe of daylight shining through the curtains feels absolutely blinding to me. After a few moments to gather myself, two things occurred to me. First, I hadn't imagined it. It was my photo album. It was my photo album set that sat on the coffee table. And secondly, Vinyl addressed me as beautiful. Vinyl addressing me as beautiful. This is the man who, until this point, never referred to me in a romantic sense as anything sweeter than babe. I was never fond of pet names along those lines, but that's been a constant for most of my life. Tommy is a common nickname for me, and it's one that I hated during its inception period when I was at boarding school. It grown on me over the years, but until fairly recently, I referred to my proper first name. Then Vinyl came along, and suddenly Tommy became the one that felt quite sweet. Octi was one that started around high school for me, and Willis, my inversion to it was terribly strong. It also grew on me again when Vinyl came along and started using it. It became more than bearable. So it didn't get me wrong. So don't get me wrong. I'm used to nicknames, but beautiful? That caught me with one hoof off the merry-go-round. I can tell you that. "You want some aspirin?" she called from the kitchen. "Please," I called immediately, regretting it as the pain echoed through my skull. The incision caused my throat to burn again, as if it was all one long running through pain running through my head and my neck down to my chest, where my stomach is now beginning to feel uneasy. Actually, scratch that. Uneasy doesn't quite justify the intensity of the wave of nausea that suddenly washed over me. Without any warning, after breathing heavily for a few seconds, I managed to catch on to what was coming, shut up onto my hooves, and ran to our downstairs bathroom as quickly as I was capable of in my condition. Luckily, I ran without a moment to spare and proceeded to violently empty my stomach contents into our toilet. I believe that I have already pointed out how unbelievably dim-witted I can become whenever I drink. So the fact that within minutes of waking up, I was throwing up profusely and can only serve as an irritating reminder of this fact. After a few moments hunched over in the basin, making sure I got as much as up as I could, I felt Vinyl wrap her foreleg around me and gently start nuzzling the back of my head. I couldn't even I hadn't even heard her walk in. "Got it all up?" she asked amiably. "Just I stopped midway through my raspy sentence as a tickle washed over my throat, causing me to erupt in a brief cough. About I gasped. She kissed the back of my head before letting go of me and walking out of the cramped toilet. She returned a few moments later carrying some pills and a glass. I put the toilet lid down and sat on it as she passed me the pills and filled the glass up with from the sink. What happened? What happened last night? I asked as I swallowed the pills and took the glass from her, chuckling, chugging it all down in 2 large gulps. I'm not surprised you don't remember, she said with a chuckle. It's gotta be the worst I've seen you, Tavi. 7 scotches on top of everything else? I'm amazed you didn't drink yourself into the ground. Bugger me! I gasped. Did you say 7 scotches? She simply nodded in return. So, what happened then? Well, we got to Club Zero and then. No, no, no! I said, dismissively, cutting her off, Mrs. What happened? What do you mean, Octi? She replied, her eyes shifting slightly in worry. I've been dating her for long enough to know she's hiding something, even without the more unusual occurrences that I've noticed this morning. I could have seen it. I think you know exactly what I mean, I said, still a bit raspy from the soreness in my throat. My photo album on the coffee table? The kissing? The snuggling? The fact that you called me beautiful earlier? What's going on? What do you think? What, you don't think you're beautiful? She asked defensively, clearly starting to feel comfortable. She always tries to guilt trip me. What, you don't think you're beautiful? She asked defensively, clearly starting to feel uncomfortable. She always tries to guilt trip. Please, don't, please, don't try and turn this around, Final. I have a monstrous hangover, and I would appreciate you sparing the bullshit. I said, unwillingly cursing to emphasize that this wasn't a good morning to mess me around. She knows I only swear when I'm drunk or when I'm in a foul mood, and the effect was immediate. Look, she said, her ears dropping. Something did happen last night, but what? I asked. Just, look, it's complicated, and I'd much rather talk to you about it when you're not hungover. Blimey! She sounded inexplicably serious there. Reading between the lines, I instantly knew from the look on her face that she was really playing the whole thing down. When she said complicated, she seemed completely unable to bring her eyes to meet mine. A sure sign that something was very, very wrong, and I panicked. I need some air, I said firmly, standing up and shakingly making my way towards the door. Giving a courteous glance back as I walked outside, I noticed Vinyl stood absently still, leaning against the door frame of the bathroom door, head drooped down. It may sound cliche saying that two ponies who have been together long enough can read each other like a book. It's only cliche because it's true. Spend enough time with some pony, and you'll find out quite a lot about them. In this case, I knew that Vinyl wasn't chasing after me because she knew I needed my space right now. The morning air felt refreshing, but this was trivial given my pronouncing headache and aching stomach. Thinking about it, it was truly surprising how quickly the next few hours passed by. It turns out that it was just after lunchtime when I woke up. So when I went along to my favorite cafe near the center of town, Ponyville really is a marvelous little community. where you can sit outside and relax in tranquility of a small town life, as opposed to the hustle and bustle you may receive in the larger cities like Canterlot. I basked in the warmth of the afternoon sunlight as the summer breeze washed over me, sipping my orange juice as the pills I had taken earlier slowly began to take effect, and time simply disappeared. I moved on to tea as my head felt less heavy, and later on, when my stomach settled, I ordered some dandelion sandwiches. Our fridge at home is always well stocked, so I rarely get anything too heavy whenever I eat out. Several friends stopped by over the course of the day for quick chats as they went about their business. Lyra happily explained how she was judging at the Ponyville swim meet in a couple weeks, and shortly after that, Rarity joined me to tell me that about the costumes she had designed for Sapphire Shores. Princess Twilight stopped by briefly as well, tailed by those sweet cutie marker cedar fillies that always get into some kind of mischief around town. I was happy for the distractions, but of course my mind was otherwise occupied. Moments like earlier, wherever when I panic and need to be alone, are few and far between for me. But the time to myself was a mixed blessing. While I could recover in relatively peace and quiet, the moments of solitude were spent filling my head with possible theories about last night. Had Final met another man? Where did the axe? Where did the kind axe? Some some way of making up for something? Was she acting out of guilt? But every theory I could come up with fell to pieces when I thought about the photo album. Why did she bring it down? I couldn't come up with a single logical theory. There was pictures of us together in it, but not that many. It was mostly the pictures of my childhood. There were plenty of albums in the room, one that were full of pictures of the two of us that she could have taken, but she chose mine instead. Why? By the time I asked for the bill, I been here for nearly 5 hours. I've been asking for regular refills the whole time and promptly drawn 10 times more tea than I do on a weekly basis. So it wasn't hugely surprising when the bill amounted to nearly 40 bits. A quick pat down revealed that I had forgotten to bring any money. Shit! I gasped, much louder than I intended to. A bit short, asked a familiar voice behind me. I immediately tensed up as a purse hit the table in front of me. My purse. Thank you, Vinyl, I said quietly. How did you find me? Well, you've been gone long enough, she replied, taking the seat opposite me. Still, she couldn't look me in the eye. I know this is your favorite place to wind down, and once I've given you a few hours, I notice you've forgotten your purse. You never come by here without having at least a cup of tea, so it wasn't hard to put one and two together. Feeling better? Slightly, I said as I dug the coins from their respective pockets. The headache's worn off, and my tummy seems to have settled for now. But I gather that's not exactly the question you're asking. Well, yes and no, Vinyl said as I dropped 43 bits onto the small plastic tray the bill had came with, tipping as I normally do. I'm glad you're feeling better, but I'd rather you weren't in a bad mood when I talked to you about last night. We don't always get what we want, Vinyl, I said matter of factly as I stood up, taking my purse with me. Come on, you can explain everything on our way home. My tone of voice when I said explained everything made it clear I wasn't likely to give Vinyl any choice in the matter. Now, please. don't look at the situation and think that we're an unhappy couple. The truth couldn't be more contrary to whether the evidence would suggest this. But we do have our fights. Every couple has fights now and then, and it can be oddly therapeutic. Finals difficult is a difficult matter to live with, and when we fight, I find myself venting up a lot of pent up stress. Vinyl Vinyl cares for me deeply and assumes a more timid role in these disputes. My guess being that she thinks she's crossed the line and doesn't want to do anything to push me further over the edge. She really, she's really quite a sweet when you scratch away the surface. So, I said, breaking the tense silence as the town square faded into the distance behind us. Start explaining. Well, you were pretty wasted. I mean, way worse than you've seen before. I felt like it this morning. You don't know the half of it, she says, chuckling slightly. I carried you home last night. My natural instinct to start apologizing for causing her such inconvenience, but she continues before I get the chance. So, while I was carrying you back, you mistook a garbage can for a mirror, told an extremely offensive joke, and threw upon me. What offensive joke? I asked, trying to not dwell on other things. She paused briefly. I'll tell you some other time. So then I made this awful comment saying that telling that joke was about as mature as a prepubescent cult. And you said she stopped mid sentence, looking around, seeing if we were alone. One thought enters my mind. I couldn't have said that. At least I certainly hope I hadn't. And you said you used to be one. Fuck. I did say it. Right. It's official. I'm never drinking again. I know most people say that just to relieve the monetary of the hangover pain, but I mean it 100%. Alcohol had made me indefinitely blurt out the biggest secret of my life, as it's as if all the suffering I went through meant absolutely nothing. Tartarus and Equestria in boarding school, endless ridicule from high school to high school, and now that I found somebody who makes it all the hardship worthwhile, I blow the whole thing to smithereens. Is it true? She asked, but the way she asked it told me she already knew the answer. The very fact of asking was just a formality. It's true. We walked in silence for a few moments. I struggled to compose myself and asked the question, balancing on my tongue. Do you want to break it off then? She stops walking, and she shoots me a look of confusion. Break what off? It. Us. I said. Do you want to break up with me? Why the hell would I want to do that? She asked. The fact that she's asking is a relief, but the tone of accusation in her voice is very discomforting, disconcerting. Because of what I am, I said, ashamed as I have kept her in the dark for so long. I began to picture all the good times we spent together up to now and think of how they'll all soon be nothing but memories. How our love will fall apart to something unsalvageable. I was scared for my future, as I was certain I finally found some pony I wanted to share it with. I was so deep in thought, it caught me completely off guard when Vinyl strode up to me and pulled me in for a kiss. For every fear disappeared in an instant as we stood still, lips locked, together in a tender embrace that I wanted to go on forever. My stomach became alive with butterflies and my legs became weak. Excruciatingly, excruciatingly danced throughout anxiety danced throughout my body like ponies always excitedly danced through my body, like the ponies always dance in the clubs whenever vinyl hits the decks. My brain became overloaded as a number of sensations combined to feel the intense adrenaline rush. The taste of Vinyl's mouth pressed against mine, the smell of her sweat in the late afternoon sun, and the feeling of her forelegs wrapped tightly around me, holding me close as if the very her very life depended on it. It may be just the best kiss of my life. She finally pulled her head back and looked me right in the eyes. She didn't dare let go of me, but I didn't struggle. I always feel safe when her forelegs wrapped around me. Her horn ignited and lifted her glasses off her head so she could look me right in the eyes, and vice versa. I love you, she said, speaking slowly and clearly. I love you so much, but not because of what you are. I love you for who you are. I love the beautiful, caring, all around awesome mirror you are. And I don't care who or what you used to be, and I don't want you to delude yourself into thinking that anything could ever cause me to love you any less than I do. I love you, Octavia, so, so much. I began to well up as she spoke, and I gazed into her deep red eyes. They're and striking, the strong and striking eyes that can stare at a computer screen for hours upon end as she creates her remixes, but also sweet and sensitive enough to comfort me when I'm feeling down. Final, she simply hushes me, shh, gently covering my mouth with her hoof. I don't need to know everything right now, she explains. You can tell me as much or as little as you feel like you need to, whenever you want. Some of it may be difficult for me to hear, which I'm prepared for, but I want you to know that I'm always here for you. The tears begin to flow freely now. I had been preparing for the worst, but of all ponies, Final Scratch just proved herself to be the best mare I could have possibly ended up with. She pulled me in for a hug, and now it was my turn to cuddle up to her. The warmth of her body against mine was such a wonderful sensation, one I wanted to feel for the rest of my life. I gotta, I gotta say, it's a bit weird though, she said. What's that? Going for all that just to end up dating mares anyway? Typical Final. She's joking, of course. Though, by all rights, I should be offended. I find myself giggling slightly. If humor helps her come to terms with everything, so be it. Sexual preference and gender identity aren't synonyms, I explain. Now, you're starting to sound like my old Octi. I laughed again. Granted, two mirrors randomly hugging each other in the middle of town may have been an odd sight, and I did catch a few ponies shooting us an occasional stare, but frankly, I couldn't care less. I was overjoyed with Final's reaction to a secret that has plagued me for years, and for the time being, nothing else mattered. Just one more thing I need to know, though, she says, breaking the blissful silence. What? Why exactly didn't you tell me this before now? Crap. Somewhere nearby, a fan is about to hit something unpleasant. My father always my father always encouraged me to keep it completely secret. As much as I rather continue our embrace, Final pushed me away, but only so she can hold me close and look at me in confusion. What do you mean? She asked. Her her face said confusion, but her eyes said differently. Well, father always taught me never to tell any pony about it. He said that ponies would treat me as some kind of freak if I told them. I can see what her I can see what's in her eyes now. Anger. But I continued. I mean, He was the one who arranged the treatment and surgery, everything. But looking back, I think he always reluctantly to do so. I can't say I ever felt like he truly accepted me as a daughter. Mother seemed perfectly happy, but father would always be more concerned about me tarnishing the family name. As the last sentence escaped my lips, it was as if a flick had been switched on inside Vinyl. One moment she was there, and the next she was off, charging down the road towards our house. I ran after her, the image of her eyes still fresh in my mind. Red, beautiful, and striking, but above everything else, they're absolutely furious. Yep, the shit has hit the fan. Vinyl, wait! I called after her, but to no avail. But the time I turned the corner and onto our road, she already disappeared into the house. She never met my parents, and I kept putting it off, desperately trying to avoid the encounter. See, my mother and father are very traditional Trottingham ponies, and our family is one of the most well known and respected in the state. I certainly wasn't looking forward to telling Vinyl the story that my father used to cover up my transition. That would be me adding fuel to the fire, along with a few tons of dynamite. I arrived at her door, still ajar after Vinyl had purposely burst through it, and I could still see the photo album on the coffee table in the living room, but I ignored it. Vinyl sat at the kitchen tables, so I slowly walked towards her. Walking through the hallway, I caught a quick look at myself in the bathroom mirror. I looked absolutely dreadful. The bloodshot eyes and a terribly bedraggled mane. Every pony I've spoken to must have just been too polite to say anything. As I approached the kitchen, I noticed that she had the table, sat at the table. She left using our finest plate. She had set the table before she left using our finest plates and silverware. Freshly picked roses sat in my favorite vase in the middle of the table, and she got the candle she bought me for Hearts and Hooves Day. I could smell casserole, my favorite meal, setting the oven low on low heat to keep it warm, and then I noticed something. Vinyl has laid out a quill and roll of parchment on the table. The sweetness of the dinner gesture makes me feel slightly weak at the knees, but the parchment confuses me slightly. Vinyl glared at me. Hooves crossed like a filly throwing a tantrum. What's this all about? I asked, gesturing to the parchment. I think you should write a letter, she says. Her voice is drooping with venom, but I can tell none of it is aimed at me. What am I writing exactly? A message for your parents, she says matter of factly. I may not have met them yet, but I think it's about damn time I did.